Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
All right. Yo, what do everybody? It's your boy John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast, back at you with another one. My boys Vlad, Barry, and today we got a special guest in the building, and that's AFC East reporter at Fox Sports, Henry McKenna. Welcome to the show, Henry. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, gentlemen. I'm stoked to be here.
Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate that, man. AFC East reporter, and we're in the AFC East and talking about, we're big Patriots fans, and we got a lot of concerns, Henry. So let's talk about some AFC and what you're seeing, the trends going on. First of all, we're at what, roster cutdowns this week, right?
Yeah,
teams have to be down to the 53-man rosters.
Yep, that starts on Tuesday.
Yeah, so that's tomorrow. I guess first, any surprise cuts you're thinking about or you know of?
Nothing that I know of yet. I think that the Patriots they always do something surprising. This year, it'll be interesting at linebacker. I think they could go a number of directions. Obviously, they're going to keep Juwan Bentley around, but then and probably Mac Wilson, who they traded for this offseason. But then there's an interesting logjam of Raekwon McMillan, Jelani Tavai, Cameron McGrone. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Cameron McGrone, who was a guy that everybody expected to be a starter this year, maybe he gets cut. Former fifth-round pick. He was injured for all of last year, and so, maybe he ends up off the roster. Another guy that's not like super interesting, but is possible. Maybe we see like James Ferentz, the team's backup interior offensive lineman. Maybe he gets cut and ends up off the roster for like a few days. And then they do what they did with Brian Hoyer, which is like nudge, nudge, handshake. Like, we'll have you back once we can make room for you. But they're probably going to put a few players on injured reserve in the meantime. But it's crowded in terms of like special teams players as well. They've got Cody Davis, they've got Justin Bethel, they've got Matthew Slater. They've got this young guy, the safety out of Texas, I believe, Brendan Schooler. So that will be interesting. Can they keep all of them? I think because Ty Montgomery just got hurt, maybe they want to keep everybody. I don't know. And then the last position I'll hit on is running back. Again, Ty Montgomery might have his injury might change the complexion a little bit, but like a guy like Kevin Harris, who they just drafted, can he make the roster? And I'm certain that JJ Taylor will not. So not a lot of, I don't think any of those would like terribly surprise anyone, but that's kind of what the Pats are considering in the next like 24 hours.
Do you really think they're gonna keep Brian Hoyer and not go with Zappi or whatever his name is?
Yeah, Bailey Zappi. That's a good question. I think they like Hoyer, considering Joe Judge is a first-time quarterbacks coach. I think they probably like having Hoyer in that room as someone they can lean on for veteran leadership. So yeah, I think he sticks around. But like we talked about, maybe they do cut him and see, if they can just cut him and then stash him back on the roster. So you never know if doing that too many times or with too many players might draw attention from the NFL rule committee, and that like next year they wouldn't just change it because the Pats keep doing it. That's the sort of thing that happens with the Patriots. They like exploit a rule and then it gets changed. But yeah, I mean, I guess if they can just keep exploiting it, maybe they keep trying it. So
how do you like
Go ahead.
I think Zappy's played well, surprisingly well, honestly. When I was interviewing his coaches before for minicamp and after the draft, they were talking about how he was a true competitor, not the kind of guy that would be satisfied with a backup job. And you don't always expect, sometimes middle round quarterbacks, they aren't by nature, they are by nature backups. Like they're kind of resigned to their fate in the NFL as being backups, especially if you get drafted behind a first round pick, like Mac Jones. So I was interested to kind of like see that mentality, because it is a cliche. Like every player wants to start. They want to compete for the starting job, but sometimes also players understand their role, which is to not be starters. So I'm interested in what Bailey Zappi can bring in the coming years, whether he ever gets to the point where he can push Mac Jones. Likely not, but he did progress in this offense much quicker than I expected. He looked comfortable and in sort of a off season of nervousness and apparent turmoil. Maybe that's one thing that fans can take comfort in, that their rookie quarterback developed at a quicker pace than is typical.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, speaking of the offense, man, what do you think about, the offense and what the Patriots are doing? I mean, being in this market and reading up on all the sporting news here, the radio, it's a lot of concerns here, man. What's your thoughts around what the Patriots are doing with, the offensive coordinator, Mac Jones' second year, and not looking so good in the preseason?
Yeah, there's so much doom and gloom surrounding this team. I think if you were to look at sports radio, you're probably getting too much doom and gloom. Like I think as is typical for sports radio, you're making it out to be worse than it is. But I think if you look at the good beat writers who have been covering this team for years, I would like to include myself in that bundle, but I'll also include the true all-stars like Mike Reese and Phil Perry and Mark Daniels and Zach Cox and others. All those guys, like myself, have been reporting on. Oh, I forgot Andrew Callahan. Can't forget Andrew Callahan. But anyway, we've been reporting that there's just not a lot of consistency and definitely not a lot of success when it comes to this new outside zone offense. So they're trying some new elements. They're trying to incorporate a Shanahan offense, a McVay offense, and these concepts in theory can help the Patriots offense a lot. I mean, if I were to tell you this offseason, Patriots are going to revamp their offense, it's going to be a love child of Belichick's offense, McVay's offense, and Shanahan's offense, you would probably be pretty excited about that, like if I sold it in that way. But it hasn't looked as good as it sounds, and I think the Patriots are going to have to figure out what that means. Does that mean they spend the first 4 weeks figuring it out, kind of like they do in most seasons, or do they kind of start to trend back toward what they know and what they're good at, which is Belichick and sort of McDaniel's offense? I'm not sure is the answer. And now that we can't watch practice anymore, we won't know what they're planning to do. We'll have to see in week one how much outside zone offense we see. And like the difference for listeners who might not know is the Patriots ran an aggressive downhill blocking scheme for many years, where their blockers tried to generate forward push, right? But what is different about Shanahan's offense is that it gets offensive linemen moving laterally. So the offensive line will it's kind of crazy. Like if you watch it from behind, they're kind of like moving, and if people are just listening to the podcast, it's kind of like waving your hand. It's like these 5 entities like kind of moving across the offensive line. So rather than generating that push, they're actually getting the defense on roller skates moving laterally in a way where offensive linemen are a little bit more agile than defensive linemen. And all of a sudden it creates holes in the defense that the running back makes one cut, gets upfield, and exploits. Again, it's in theory and honestly in practice for a lot of teams. Watch the preseason highlights from the Dolphins' first team offense. They look great running this offense.
Yeah.
But the Patriots don't. And so we'll see how much they stick to it and how much they try to get back to what Mac Jones is actually proven to be good at.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you're talking about, because I was actually watching the Dolphins and seeing their line moving, how much space it creates going the opposite direction for Tua or whoever is at quarterback. And this year, the Patriots drafted Cole Strange, and it seems like he's the prototypical lineman for this kind of offense, and he's been well reported that he's doing well in the system. Do you think maybe the issue with the pads in this scheme working is the lack of athletic offensive linemen?
Could be a part of it. It could be a part of a new system being incorporated with old personnel. There's one thing that makes this clearly an offensive line problem in my mind, and that's that Mac Jones in 1-on-1s and 7-on-7s looks really sharp, and in 11-on-11s looks dull. And what's the difference between a 7-on-7 and an 11-on-11? Well, the offensive line. So if the pass rush and the offensive line are all of a sudden what's disrupting Mac Jones's ability to operate an offense, well, it's probably an offensive line issue. So there's a lot that's not working on the offensive line, and it's surprising to me because that's just what the Patriots have done well for so long. And they have a lot of guys that are coming back. Trent Brown, Isaiah Wynn, Michael Onwenu, David Andrews. I mean, Onwenu was the starter last year to start the season, even if Ted Karras took over. So in theory, you have 4 of last year's starters back, and for some reason they're not running even their own offense well, let alone this new one. Definitely surprising. I don't really know what the answer is. I mean, ultimately, I think you go back to coaching and you're like, okay, well, Matt Patricia is play calling and sort of big picture taking over the offense as an offensive coordinator, but he's also the offensive line coach. And Billy Yates is the assistant offensive line coach. So is there an issue there where the message is not really getting to the players? And I think you kind of have to wonder in the coming weeks, months, if this offensive line doesn't get back to the shape that we saw it in last year, where it was really the strength of the offense. Right now it's the weakness. Then, I mean, you kind of have to point at Patricia, right? I mean, there's nowhere else to look.
Mm-hmm. Any sign of Dante's Connecticut down there?
Yeah. That would be a great news. They need him. I mean, if they want Matt Patricia to run the offense, I think it would be much easier for him to do so with an experienced offensive lineman. It's kind of like when new head coaches are like McVay, he hired Wade Phillips to run his defense, right? Because he needed someone to really help him. He needed someone to keep, the defensive side of the street clean while he watched the offense and really used what his strength is. Wade Phillips was the perfect foil, right? Sort of similar, but different, obviously. With Patricia, it's like, okay, Patricia's trying for the first time to be offensive coordinator, but he's also going back to coaching the offensive line for the first time in 15 years or 10 years. Why not give him a little more support? I mean, Billy Yates is a good coach, so I think that's kind of what they think is helping. But what would be better? A guy like obviously Dante Scarnecchia, who is just the best that maybe has ever been for offensive linemen. So, but it's a pipe dream. He's not coming back. He has done some consulting work. He's come in and out, and I think he's helped, but he's not the coach. So.
Let's see. I wanted to ask you, we've been talking a lot about, Matt Patricia, coaching this offense. Wanted, and Joe Judge as well. And it really, has me concerned whether they really have the right guys. coaching this offense and why they didn't bring somebody, experienced that would actually be able to, coach this new offense they're trying to install with the zone scheme and stuff. So why do you think that is that Bill didn't bring some, experienced offensive, coordinated offensive, minded coach that would be able to help out with this, system that they're trying to run offensively?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, Miami brings in Mike McDaniel straight out of Shanahan's system in San Francisco. Why? Because they wanted to install that kind of offense. And so you have to wonder, Bill had plenty of opportunities to hire off other staffs this year. Wasn't going to be able to hire McDaniel because he got a better job, but could he have poached someone from a different team that runs this? A lot of teams run this offense. You can go to LA. They're kind of dry on talent, but you can go to LA to look at that. You can go to Green Bay. They're running it. Mike LaFleur. Even to a degree, the Jets are running this offense. So there is no shortage of people who are very versed in it, which begs the question as to why they're getting someone who's not so versed in it. One thing that was interesting today, Joe Judge talked about how this offense is actually not too far from what the Patriots ran in 2013. I guess that was a time when this offense was actually in vogue. Like Gary Kubiak ran it with the Ravens for a year. There was the NFL cyclical. So we've seen this offense be popular before. Kyle Shanahan's dad, if you guys remember his name. Mike Shanahan. Thank you. Gosh, it's embarrassing. Mike Shanahan was the one that really invented the offense. And so obviously there have been different eras of it and different iterations of it. Point is, other people know this offense better than Matt Patricia. And, sorry, that's not where I was going. Point is, Billy Yates was, I believe, in the Patriots offense running this, like blocking in this offense. I think that's what Judge said. Now, I'm literally Googling to make sure I'm getting this right here. So Yates was in the offense at the time as a player and operating in it to some degree. No, but he was back in 2008. So I don't know what Judge was saying, but anyway, it sounds like as a player, Yates actually was in this style of offense. So to a degree, obviously he knows it because he lived it. And it's not like it's totally foreign to these guys. Patricia spent a lot of time defending it, but it's different. It's different to coach how to defeat these blocks than to effectively land them. So I don't know. I think it's a good question. It's like, why these guys? Why rebuild the system? Why right now in Mac Jones' second year, which Bill Belichick has always said is the most important year? It all adds up to maybe they tried to do too much this offseason, and really maybe they didn't put enough days in, which would be a surprising thing for Belichick, who says no days off, has been like pretty regularly skipping weekends, which he typically works through with training camp. I mean, I'm not saying he's skipping the weekends, but he's giving his players the weekends off. So surprising that we aren't seeing more practices when the team seems to be struggling. Surprised that he decided to undergo and is still undergoing all these changes through transition and pivotal moments of Mac Jones' career. It's all, the answer to your question is, I don't know. I really don't know.
What's more surprising to me, I feel as though Bill Belichick usually does the opposite of what the whole league is doing.
Yes.
Whenever he's running a 3-4, he'll run a 4-3 or you know what I mean? So like, so to me, I when I heard that they were trying to do the McVay or Shanahan offense, I was like, I was intrigued because it's an exciting offense. I mean, we've been watching it all over the league, but that's not what the Patriots usually do. The Patriots usually do what everybody else is not doing, play checkers, right? Like That's play chess. I play chess.
Well, right now they are playing checkers, I think. I mean, what you're saying, right?
That is, I just find that really weird. But my question is more toward the defense. You know, I know Malcolm Butler is no longer here pretty much, and Jalen Mills is pretty much coming out to be the number one corner. Just what do you think of the defense? How are we looking in the back end with the linebackers and the front seven? Like, what do you think of the whole defense?
Yeah. Well, Vlad, I think you make an awesome point on, and one I've written a little bit about, but I'm planning on doing a column on this surprising development of Belichick being a trendsetter for so long, and then all of a sudden he's following the trend, and he's like kind of late into it. But yeah, copycat league, and Belichick's usually getting copied, not doing the copying. Yes, as for the defense, cornerbacks are interesting. It's I think it's kind of like an ongoing development year for this, where Jalen Mills is kind of their top cornerback, and he's played well, but he's not, like, I was looking through the list of cornerbacks that have been number one, and it's like J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore, Malcolm Butler. It goes back like
Darrell
Revis, Asante Samuel, Aqib Talib, and then before that, the eras of like Ty Law and so on. He's had so many like pure CB1 shutdown, lockdown corners. We all watched Jalen Mills last year not be that. He's not even that in the second cornerback spot. And even if he's playing at a much higher level, I don't think he's a true shutdown number one corner. So we'll see a lot of zone to help compensate for him not being a true matchup guy, where they can just put him on, set it and forget it with him on the number one receiver. And then I think you look at their depth options. They're trying out Jonathan Jones for the first time at outside corner. So that will be an evolving process for him. Miles Bryant's on the inside. He's a young guy. I think they're happy with how he's doing, but I do think Marcus Jones is likely to win that job, let's say by like week 6 or something like that. And then Jack Jones. I think Jack Jones ultimately, once he develops, becomes an intriguing option for them outside. Maybe he needs a year to gain some weight. He's a very skinny guy. But I also think they like to rotate when they have depth like this, just like last year. I mean, J.C. Jackson only played like 80% of snaps, I think. As good as he was, arguably, one of the best 3, 4, 5 cornerbacks in the NFL. He still only played 80 snaps. And so I think even without a top corner like that, they might want, or especially without a top cornerback like that, they might want to rotate. And then maybe like, legs and endurance is kind of like a little bit where they might get an edge. It's not a great edge to have. You'd rather have talent. That's a much more meaningful one. But yeah, that's me getting fixated on the cornerback position because I think it's the most interesting. They've got fast linebackers in the middle, and that's new for them. I think they're pretty happy with that. So Patriots fans will start to learn the names of, Mac Wilson, Raekwon McMillan, even Juwan Bentley. Then they've got Josh Uche and Anfernee Jennings, younger guys that everybody's already heard of, but should actually take that step forward that everyone's been thinking that they'll take. And then I think Judon has to have a really good 17-game season as opposed to a good 13 game season. Yeah. Christian Barmore, last name I'll throw out there, was a monster for most of training camp. Not sure he's kind of been at that same level for preseason. I'm just gonna quickly look. I'm talking at how many snaps he's played. Or maybe while you guys ask your next question, I'll look that up. But basically, I just haven't been wowed by him. I don't think he's he was so good early in training camp, and I'm not sure he's at that. I thought he was going to be very quickly one of the best defensive tackles, interior rushing defensive tackles. maybe even a 3-down player. But we'll see. Jury's still out there, but I am definitely looking forward to seeing him play regular season football.
I know you're covering the whole AFC East. Where do you rank the Patriots in terms of, the rest of the division?
Yeah, that's tough. And yeah, I just quickly glanced at Pro Football Focus just to finish up Barmore. And like, he hasn't played a lot and he's not playing well when he's in there. So that's sort of surprising. I mean, it's just preseason, but so it goes. The rest of the division, I'm just going to rapid fire it. Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots, New York Jets. I know. People are not happy with me if they're saying stuff like that. It is just preseason, and maybe I'm getting too excited about watching game tape, and I'm breaking it down, and I'm putting, you know what I mean? Like the one caveat I will sort of provide for myself, and maybe this will be reassuring for Patriots fans, that's just yourself. I remember when Chip Kelly and Sam Bradford were on the same team together for the first time. Sam Bradford goes out, he throws like 4 touchdowns in a quarter in preseason. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, this offense is."
I remember
perfect.
that.
Sam Bradford, his comeback for look out. And then Sam Bradford and Chip Kelly both stunk. So maybe we look at what's happening with Tua and Tyreek and Mike McDaniel, and we're like, "Oh my God, mind blown. This is perfect." Tua's like on a comeback tour, or just like the come up tour, and it's all working in Miami. So right now might be overreacting to preseason, but certainly the arrow is pointing down on New England and up on Miami. If I'm wrong, I'll get, you guys can have me on here. I'll apologize.
We'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
Definitely, we'll hold you accountable on that for sure.
Yeah. Talking about the Jets, I know that Zach Wilson ended up getting injured. Any news on him? Because right now you got Joe Flacco looking like he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, he had a bit of a rough preseason game too. Threw an interception right to I think it was a linebacker, but so did Mac Jones. So
right in there.
Right.
Yeah, so Flacco is probably, if I had to guess, I would say Flacco is going to start week 1. The bone bruise and the meniscus, you just put it together. It's not usually, I'm not a doctor. I can't really speculate to the specifics of his knee. But those are injuries that it would be on the early side if he was actually able to play week 1 in terms of recovery. So my guess is he's back week 2 or week 3. We'll see Joe Flacco for at least a game or 2. And what we might see is that offense is better with Joe Flacco in it, because I am very much not a Zach Wilson believer. I'm in fact a Zach Wilson hater. I think, yeah, he was in a bad offense last year, but yeah, he was also pretty bad himself.
Well, the backup was better than him last year as well.
There was a time where Mike White looked like he had more upside than Zach Wilson, which is not what you want to think about your number 2 overall pick.
That's not good, man.
Yeah, not at all.
Any rookies you're looking at? You think the rookie of the year might come out of the AFC East? Maybe. I mean, defensively anyway.
Yeah, that's a tough question. The Jets drafted 2 really good defensive linemen, both Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens. Look really good. Like, both of them look very, very good. The question will be whether anyone pays attention to them on a really bad Jets team. But honestly, if the Jets are trailing by a lot often, how often do they get sacks, right? Like, if the Jets fall behind 14-0 right away for most of the season, and then the opponents just run the ball, then guys like Clemens and Johnson won't pad that stat that sack statistic, which is so important for winning Defensive Player of the Year. Who are some other the Jets and the Dolphins and the Bills? I guess Kyer Elam, but again, I think these awards are statistically driven. So a guy like Bills cornerback Kyer Elam, who will likely play for the whole year, as they're either their cornerback 1 or cornerback 2, depending on Tre'Davious White's health. I think he might play well. He just might not be Rookie of the Year material. So yeah,
Sauce Gardner.
Sauce. Oh yeah, how could I forget? Yeah, same question, same problem, I'd say, for Sauce. But I just finished a feature on Sauce, which is why it's embarrassing that I didn't think of him right away. Sauce is a special player, a really special player, and he's so weird to see at practice because he's huge. He looks like
he's huge,
a receiver or like a safety or like something. Like he looks like almost like Kyle Duggar, but bigger. He's like taller and skinnier. Anyway, you're like, how does that human play quarterback? Because like you're so used to like Malcolm Butler size cornerbacks. That's like the prototypical size we've known for so long. He's bigger than Richard Sherman, who's the guy like it's most natural comp. Anyway, he's special. He's a really
that's nuts.
He's a super humble guy. He's like the rare mindset of like humble and incredibly confident. So like he'll go out, play well, but then he'll like go home, watch the tape and be like, here are all the ways I'm going to get better. And that sort of mentality is like so crucial for becoming like one of the best cornerbacks, is that ability to be confident on the field and rebuild yourself off it. So maybe he doesn't win the award because he doesn't have stats, but I think he could have a case on film. Yes.
And you thought of the offensive rookie of the year?
At least coming out of the AFC East, Breece Hall is the most obvious guy. I think that he'll have enough running room, even if they're going to stack the boxes. If the Jets offense kind of tanks, passing offense tanks. Aside from him, I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to take off, but he certainly is talented enough. So keep an eye. But if I'm going to go in on how bad I think Zach Wilson is, then I can't really say Garrett Wilson's going to have a big year. Especially with Elijah Moore. I mean, I love Elijah Moore. There's a reason Joe Flacco compared him to Steve Smith. I mean, that guy he just has special. You hear the cliche twitchiness all the time in football, but my goodness, he just moves so fast. And it's also, twitchy is also like maybe wrong because he's so smooth the way that he changes directions and gets in and out of breaks. So, but yeah, go back to Breece Hall. That's the AFC East's best candidate for Rookie of the Year.
That's crazy because I feel like Michael Carter was a really good back for the Jets last year. Yeah. You think Breece Hall is going to, come in there and take a chunk out of his playing time?
Yeah, it's fair. It's a fair question because Carter was also starting. He was with the first team offense when I watched Jets training camp against the Falcons. And so you're right. And that's also why I'm not really going to draft Breece Hall in fantasy this year. Same thing for James Cook, right? Like Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are there. It's going to be a committee. But yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, like, but in terms of like, if I had to pick the best candidate, I still think it's probably Breece Hall.
Yeah, I asked because I actually drafted Michael Carter, and now you're making me feel, some kind of way.
Well,
he's a backup, and I'm like, man, I hope I don't.
If it's PPR, I think you'll be okay. And if it's not PPR, and he has a few good weeks at the beginning of the season, maybe you think about trading him in case Breece Hall starts to come on late season. You got to sell high.
Trade him early.
Yeah. Similarly, though, I'd say maybe trade for the Patriots running backs after like week 4 when like the Patriots have like fully crashed and burned and then they're like rebuilding again. I think that could be a possibly good play. if that's how it happens.
Honestly, I don't think you want anybody on the Patriots.
Oh, I stayed away from those guys, man.
Yeah.
Right. They have no fantasy, players that you want to draft and you'd want to pick up on your team, right? And I definitely think that any Patriot player, on a fantasy team is a red flag and, not someone you can, that's going to be consistent that you can count on, on a, week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to ask you, Henry, what do you think, Mac Jones, how do you think he's going to do this year? And overall, how do you think, the team's going to do record-wise? Like, do they make the playoffs or are they on the outside looking in? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Ooh, it's tough. So I think it's tough to say, but I think ultimately the Patriots took forced a step back in Mac Jones's development. I think he was on an upward trajectory and they kind of pushed him down a peg by doing all of this new stuff. So ultimately, can he end up back in a situation where he can succeed? Absolutely. And can the offense sort of rebound and come back up again? Absolutely. But I don't know. I don't think I'm kind of past the point of thinking that he has a substantially better year than last year, just as a passer. He looks better. That's the thing. He really does. When we're looking at 7-on-7 and we're watching 1-on-1, he just looks like he has more confidence in his throwing abilities. But when you include it as an offensive unit, that's when problems arise, and that's what we're going to see on Sunday. So I think he has a rough start to the year potentially and ends up statistically somewhere near or slightly above where he was last year. They're going to need him to be better, especially if this rushing offense struggles to start. So we might see some statistical uptick. As for overall record, I've been saying 7-10 or 8-9. I think they're just a hair below 500. The strength of schedule looks pretty tough. That second half of the year is pretty grueling. And so if they're starting slow offensively against the easier part of their schedule, this was the first 4 games was supposed to be where they started 3-1. And if they're going to start slow and be 1-3 or even give up, they're 2-2, I'd say they're expected then to win more 7, 8, 9 games. And that probably means they're behind the Dolphins in the AFC East. But yeah, it's a weird situation right now for the AFC East where these two teams look like they're just swinging in such opposite directions in terms of momentum, and it's hard to know whether it's real or not.
What you're saying is the Patriots don't make the playoffs. Is that what Jesus Christ. You heard it here first, guys. All right? Patriots are out. Okay. Find something else to do. Well, Henry, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Henry, that unfortunately I don't think this is a year that the Patriots are going to see the playoffs, as much as it hurts my heart to say that. It's certainly looking like that as right now. But
it will be a tense finish. I think it will be a really exciting season because they'll be kind of right in the middle of it. But I don't know. With that tough schedule, it might also be kind of a rough one, but we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. As always, I love coming on to chat with you and also ruin your day with bad news about the Patriots. That part I don't love. I love chatting. I don't love ruining your day. But yeah, thank you for having me very much.
We like honesty on here, man. So thank you. You're welcome to come back anytime, man. We really appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Yep.
Thank you, Henry. Nice to meet you.
All right. Bye again, guys. Yeah, nice to see you.
See you. Yes, sir. There you have it, man. Patriots out of the playoffs. Don't make any crazy bets.
Don't do that.
Or maybe you might. Like some guys just end up winning anyway, right? But we'll see what happens. But shout outs to Henry for coming on and doing the show with us. Shout outs to Barry for getting him on. If you guys want to follow Henry, it's McKenna Analysis, at McKenna Analysis on Twitter. He's out there. He's an AFC expert. If you want to catch up on everything AFC East football, he's the guy to follow. So make sure you're following us on social media and platforms as well. We're at ProFan Sports on all platforms except for Instagram, and that's ProFans_sports. We drop every week, dropping content on social media every day. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, hate, like, whatever, man. We're here for you, and that's the best way you can support us. So until next episode, yo, we out.
All right, everyone. Have a good week. See y'all next week.